Today we will be discussing Chapter 6, Measuring National Output and National Income. National Income and Product. National income and product accounts are one source of data that are in the key variables in macroeconomy. They provide a concept of framework that macroeconomists use to think about how the different parts of economy fit into each other. GDP and GNP. Gross domestic product, also known as GDP, is the final total market value of all final goods and services produced within a given period by factors of production located within a country. GDP does not include intermediate goods. Including goods when they are purchased as inputs and when they are sold as final products would be double counting and would result in an overstatement of the value of production. GDP also excludes transactions where money or goods change hands but in which no new goods and services are produced. However, it does include the income of foreigners working in the United States and the profits that foreign companies earn in the U.S. GDP also excludes the income of U.S. citizens working abroad and the profits earned by U.S. companies in foreign countries. Gross national product, aka GNP, is the market value of all final goods and services produced during a given period by factors of production owned by the citizens of a country. Calculating GDP. The expenditure approach to GDP adds up to the amount of money spent on all final goods and services during a given time period. The four main categories of expenditures are personal consumption expenditures, which in equations would be labeled as C, gross private domestic investment, which also in equations would be labeled as the letter I, government consumption and gross investment, which in equations would be labeled as the letter G, and net exports, which would be labeled as EX-IM. These four categories added together equal the GDP. The three main parts of a personal consumption expenditure, aka C, are durable goods, non-durable goods, and services. Government consumption and gross investment include expenditures by state, federal, and local governments for final goods and services. The value of net exports equals the difference between exports and imports. Since every payment from a buyer is a form of income for the seller, GDP can be computed in terms of who receives it as income. This is known as the income method of calculating GDP. Net national product, also known as NNP, is calculating GNP minus depreciation. National income is the total amount earned by factors of production in the economy. It is equal to NNP except for a statistical discrepancy. Personal income is the total income of households. Disposable personal income is what households have to spend or save after paying taxes. Personal saving rate is the percentage of disposable personal income saved instead of spent. Nominal versus real GDP. GDP is measured in current currency, is known as nominal GDP. If we use nominal GDP to measure growth, we can be misinformed into thinking that production has grown when all that has occurred is a raise in the price level. Real GDP is a more accurate measure of production, which adjusts the price changes. GDP deflator is a measure of the overall price level. Limitations of the concept of GDP. Generally speaking, increases of GDP is good. However, there may be conflict when we try to use GDP as a measure of well-being. The specifics of GDP accounting mean that institutional changes can change the value of GDP even if the real production hasn't changed. GDP does not account for most political issues such as pollution. GDP does not tell us what kind of goods are being produced or how income is distributed across the population. GDP also does not account for most transactions of informal economy. The concept of GNI, gross national income, is GMP converted into dollars by using an average of currency exchange rates over several years adjusted for rates of inflation.